I sat at the head of a table set for 8, watching the ice cream cake melt into a sugary puddle. It was 8 p.m. on my 65th birthday. My phone buzzed with a text from my son. "Mom, why are you calling? The party is next week. Are you confused again?" I almost believed him until I opened Instagram and saw them drinking Mai Tais in Greece. They thought I was senile. They were about to find out I was sharper than a guillotine. I sat at the head of my mahogany dining table and watched the ice cream cake turn into a sweet sticky puddle. The beeswax candles I had ordered specifically for tonight had burned down to sad little nubs that flickered against the darkness of the room. It was 8:15 in the evening. The table was set for 6. I had polished the silver until I could see my own reflection in the spoons, and I had ironed the linen napkins with starch so they stood up like little soldiers. I was wearing my navy blue dress with the pearl buttons. It was the dress my son Jason said made me look classy, but sitting there in the silence with the smell of cold roast beef hanging heavy in the air, I did not feel classy. I felt like a ghost haunting my own house. I had spent 2 days preparing for this dinner. It was my 65th birthday, a milestone. Most people retire at 65, but I had retired early from my law practice to help Jason and his wife Bella with the twins. I thought that meant I was part of the team. I thought that meant I mattered. I had sent the invitations 3 weeks ago. I had confirmed with Bella via text message last Tuesday. She had sent me a thumbs up emoji. So why was the driveway empty? Why was my phone silent? I checked the landline to make sure it was plugged in. It was. I checked my cell phone to make sure the volume was up. It was. The silence was not a technical error. It was a choice. The clock in the hallway chimed the quarter hour. Each dong felt like a physical blow to my chest. Maybe there was an accident. That is where a mother's mind goes first. We do not think our children are cruel. We think they are dead. My hands started to shake, so I grabbed my phone to call Jason for the 10th time. But before I could dial, I saw a notification pop up from Instagram. It was from Bella. Now I am not very good with technology, but I know how to look at pictures. I tapped the screen. My breath hitched in my throat. It was a photo of Bella and Jason. They were holding tropical drinks with little umbrellas in them. They were wearing sunglasses and bathing suits. Behind them was not the gray highway of an accident scene, but the brilliant turquoise water of the Mediterranean Sea. The caption read, "Living our best life in Greece. So grateful to disconnect and recharge with my love." The photo was posted 17 minutes ago. While I was taking the roast out of the oven, they were halfway around the world. While I was lighting the candles, they were clinking glasses on a boat. I stared at the image until my eyes burned. They were not just late. They were in a different time zone. They had planned a trip to Europe over my 65th birthday, and they had not even told me. They just let me plan the party. They let me buy the food. They let me sit here in my navy dress, waiting for a door that would never open. I felt a tear slide down my cheek, hot and humiliating. How could Jason do this? He was a good boy. He was soft. He always remembered my birthday. Even when he was in college and broke, he would send me a card. This had Bella's fingerprints all over it. Just then my phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Jason. My heart leaped. Maybe he would explain. Maybe he would apologize. I opened the message. "Mom, why are you calling me so much? You know we are in Greece. We talked about this last month. The party is next Saturday when we get back. Are you feeling okay? You seem confused again." I read the message 3 times. "Are you confused again?" The words swam before my eyes. I looked at the calendar on the wall, the big paper one where I wrote everything down in black ink. October 12th, my birthday. I looked at the date on my phone, October 12th. I was not confused. I had not agreed to a party next Saturday. We had never discussed Greece. I scrolled back through my texts with Bella. I looked for the confirmation from last Tuesday. It was gone. Deleted. A cold chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning settled over me. I stood up and walked to the calendar. I touched the square for today. Birthday dinner 6 p.m. was written there in my handwriting. But then I looked closer at the square for next Saturday. In faint pencil, someone had written Mom's birthday party. It was not my handwriting. It was a loopy scrawl that looked suspiciously like Bella's. I sat back down heavily. This was not a mistake. This was not a son forgetting his mother. This was a setup. I thought about the last few months. The way Bella would smile with pity when I couldn't find my glasses. The way she would tell Jason, "Your mom is repeating herself," when I was in the next room. The way she had suggested I give Jason power of attorney just in case. They were gaslighting me. They were trying to build a paper trail that said, "Evelyn is losing it. Evelyn forgets dates. Evelyn hallucinates conversations." If I reacted with anger now, if I screamed and cried and accused them, they would just show the text to the doctor. They would say, "Look, she is irrational. She is paranoid." They were baiting me. They wanted me to snap. They wanted the angry, senile old woman so they could take control of my estate. My hands stopped shaking. I wiped the tear from my cheek. I looked at the melting cake one last time. It was a mess, but I was not. I was a shark in a cardigan. I picked up my phone and typed a reply to Jason. "Oh, honey, you are right. I must have mixed up the dates. Have a wonderful time in Greece. We will celebrate when you get home." I pressed send. Then I stood up and walked to the kitchen. I scraped the expensive roast beef into the trash. I dumped the cake in the sink and turned on the disposal. The grinding noise was loud and violent and satisfying. I was not going to cry. I was not going to be the victim. I was going to be the lawyer I used to be. They wanted to play games with reality. Fine. I would show them what reality looked like when I controlled the narrative. I walked to my study and opened the safe. I needed to see the deed to Jason's house, because if I remembered correctly, and my memory was excellent, the house they were living in, the house they were currently leaving empty while they partied in Greece, was not actually theirs. It was mine. I walked into my study. This room was the only place in the house. Bella hadn't tried to modernize with beige pillows and live, laugh, love signs. It smelled of lemon polish and old books. I sat at the heavy oak desk, the same desk where I had drafted contracts that merged multi-million-dollar companies. I spun the dial on the floor safe, right to 10, left to 22, right to 65. My fingers didn't tremble. Muscle memory is a powerful thing, much more reliable than the gaslighting text messages of a greedy daughter-in-law. The heavy steel door swung open with a dull thud. I pulled out the hanging file marked Property 42 Oak Drive. That was the house Jason and Bella lived in. They called it their house. Bella loved to post photos of it on social media, with hashtags like homeowner and my sanctuary. But as I pulled the deed from the folder, the crisp paper told a different story. There it was in black and white. Grantor Evelyn Patterson. Grantee the Evelyn Patterson Living Trust. I let out a low, dry chuckle. They had forgotten the golden rule of real estate law. Possession is 9/10 of the law, but the deed is the 1/10 that actually matters. When Jason got married, I had offered to let them live in the investment property I owned. I told them they could save for a down payment. I never charged them rent. I never asked for a key. I just wanted them to be happy. But I never signed the title over. I was generous, not stupid. Bella must have assumed that because I was old and confused, I had forgotten the specifics of the trust arrangement. She probably thought the house was in Jason's name, or that if I was declared incompetent, she could become the trustee and sell it to fund her trips to Greece. She had underestimated the paperwork. I flipped through the file and a loose piece of paper fell out. It was a letter from my bank dated 3 months ago, regarding an inquiry about adding a secondary signer to my primary checking account. I remembered receiving it. I had called Jason and he had told me, "Oh, don't worry, Mom, that was just a bank error. I handled it." I looked at the letter again. Request initiated by Evelyn Patterson via phone. I hadn't made that call. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just about the house. They were probing the perimeter. They were testing the fences to see if the guard dog was asleep. They tried to add a name to my account. They tried to make me doubt my memory about the birthday. They were systematically dismantling my autonomy. I placed the deed on the desk. Next to it, I placed the printed screenshot of them in Greece. The evidence was starting to pile up. "You think I'm confused, Jason?" I whispered to the empty room. "You think I'm a burden?" I reached for a fresh legal pad and a red pen. I uncapped the pen with a sharp click. It sounded like the safety coming off a weapon. I wasn't going to call them out, not yet. If I confronted them now while they were in Greece, they would just spin more lies. They would say I was paranoid. They would come home and try to have me committed. No, I needed more than suspicion. I needed proof. I needed a paper trail so thick it could choke a horse. I wrote 3 words at the top of the legal pad: the money, the house, the locks. I looked at the clock. It was 9 p.m. In Greece, it was early morning. They were probably sleeping in high thread count sheets, dreaming of the inheritance they thought was just around the corner. "Sleep tight," I said, drawing a hard line under the word locks, "because when you wake up, the landlord is coming for an inspection." I did not sleep that night. Sleep is for the innocent, and right now I was neither. I was the prosecutor building a case. By the time the sun bled through the blinds of my bedroom window, I had already showered and dressed. I did not wear the navy blue dress with the pearl buttons. That dress belonged to the mother who waited for crumbs of affection. Instead, I put on a charcoal gray pantsuit, the one I used to wear to settlement hearings where I knew I had the winning hand. I pulled my hair back into a tight bun and put on my glasses. I looked in the mirror. I did not see a grandmother. I saw a threat. My first stop was Dr. Henderson's office. He had been my general practitioner for 20 years. A good man but soft, easily swayed by a tearful story from a concerned relative. I walked into the waiting room at 8 sharp, just as the receptionist was unlocking the sliding glass window. Janice looked up over her reading glasses, startled to see me. "Oh, Mrs. Patterson," she said, blinking rapidly. "We didn't have you down for an appointment today. Is everything all right? Did you have another episode?" I froze. Another episode. The words hung in the air like smoke. I walked up to the counter and placed my leather handbag down with a heavy thud. "Good morning, Janice," I said, my voice cool and even. "What exactly do you mean by another episode?" Janice flushed a deep crimson. She looked down at her computer screen, typing nervously. "Oh, well, you know, the confusion. Bella called last week and said you were having trouble recognizing people again. We did a telehealth update. Dr. Henderson prescribed that new sedative she asked for." My hands clenched at my sides. A sedative? They were drugging me, or at least they were trying to. I had never taken a sedative in my life. I leaned forward. "Janice," I said, "look at me. Do I look confused? Do I look like I don't recognize you?" She looked up, hesitating. "No, ma'am, you look..." "Well, you look very sharp." "Good," I said. "Now I want you to print my entire medical history from the last 6 months, every note, every call log, every prescription, and I want it now." Janice started to protest something about privacy forms and doctor approval, but I cut her off. Janice, I am a retired attorney. I know HIPAA laws better than I know my own grandchildren's birthdays. I have the right to my own records. Print them or I will be filing a formal complaint with the medical board before lunch. She went pale. She hit print. The printer whirred and churned out page after page. I snatched them from the tray before the ink was even dry. I sat in my car in the parking lot and read through the file. It was a work of fiction that would have impressed Stephen King. October 4th. Patient's daughter-in-law reports patient left the stove on for 3 hours. Patient denied the event. October 8th. Telehealth consult with Bella Patterson acting as proxy. Patient was agitated and nonverbal in background. Request for power of attorney evaluation. September 20th. Patient got lost driving to the grocery store. Police were called. I laughed, a harsh barking sound. I had never gotten lost in this town. I had lived here for 40 years. I helped design the zoning laws for half the streets. And the stove incident. On October 4th, I was at a book club meeting. I had witnesses. Bella wasn't just lying. She was systematically creating a digital doppelganger of me. A senile, dangerous version of Evelyn that needed to be controlled. And the worst part was she was doing it well. If a judge saw this file, he would sign the papers without blinking. I flipped to the last page. It was a copy of a document that had been scanned into the system. It was titled Affidavit of Incapacity. It was signed by Dr. Henderson. It stated that due to my rapidly progressing dementia, it was his medical opinion that I was no longer fit to manage my own affairs. The date on the signature was yesterday, the same day they flew to Greece. They had gotten the golden ticket just before they left. They were celebrating my demise with cocktails while I was still very much alive. I started the car. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles were white. I wasn't just angry anymore, I was terrified. They had the doctor. They had the narrative. They probably had the lawyer lined up to file the paperwork the second they landed. I needed to move fast. I needed to secure the one thing they wanted most, the money. I drove to the bank, First National on Main Street. I had banked there since before Bella was born. I walked in and went straight to the manager's office. Mr. Gable looked up surprised. Evelyn, he said standing up. What a pleasant surprise. I didn't smile. I closed the door behind me and sat down. Robert, I said, I need to know who has access to my accounts. He looked confused. Well, just you, Evelyn. And of course Jason is a beneficiary on the trust, but he can't access the funds until you pass, or I said, or if I am declared incompetent. Robert shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Well, yes, in that case the power of attorney would kick in. I pulled the medical records out of my bag and slammed them on his desk. They have the letter, Robert. They have a doctor saying I am crazy. They are going to walk in here next week and try to drain every penny I have. I need you to freeze everything. I want a full audit. And I want to know if anyone has tried to access the safety deposit box. Robert turned pale. He typed something into his computer. His eyes widened. Evelyn, he whispered. There was an inquiry yesterday. Someone logged into your online banking from an IP address in Athens, Greece. They tried to transfer $50,000 to an account in the Cayman Islands. The bank's fraud algorithm flagged it because it was unusual activity. It's currently pending review. Pending review. That meant it hadn't gone through yet. But it was close, too close. Cancel it, I ordered, and Robert change all my passwords. Right now, I want two-factor authentication and I want the code to go to a burner phone I am going to buy in 5 minutes. Do not send anything to my email. Bella has the password. I know she does. Robert nodded, furiously typing away. I watched him work. I felt a cold knot in my stomach. They had tried to rob me blind from a cruise ship. They were so confident, so arrogant. They thought I was a helpless old lady who couldn't remember her password. They forgot that I was the one who taught Jason how to balance a checkbook. I stood up. Thank you, Robert, I said. One more thing. If my son or his wife calls you, tell them nothing. Tell them the system is down. Tell them whatever you have to, just buy me time. I walked out of the bank into the bright midday sun. I had stopped the money. I had the medical records proving the fraud, but it wasn't enough. I needed to know the full extent of the rot. I needed to know how long this had been going on. I pulled my phone out and dialed a number I hadn't called in 10 years. It was a private investigator named Vance. He was expensive. He was rude. He smelled like cheap cigars, but he was the best at digging up dirt. Vance, I said when he answered, it's Evelyn Patterson. I have a job for you and I need you to be discreet. Evelyn, he grunted. I thought you retired. I did, I said. But I'm coming out of retirement for one last case. I need you to find everything you can on a woman named Bella Patterson, or whatever her real name is, because I have a feeling my daughter-in-law is not who she says she is. Vance met me at a diner on the edge of town an hour later. It was the kind of place where the waitresses called you honey, and the coffee tasted like battery acid. Vance looked exactly the same as he did 10 years ago. Rumpled trench coat, gray stubble, and eyes that had seen too much of the human condition. He slid into the booth opposite me without saying a word. I pushed the file across the Formica table. It contained the printouts from the doctor's office, the bank activity log, and the screenshot of the Instagram post. She's a grifter, Vance, I said, keeping my voice low. She's trying to have me declared incompetent so she can raid the trust, but she made mistakes. She got greedy. Vance flipped through the pages, chewing on a toothpick. He paused at the bank log showing the attempted transfer to the Cayman Islands. Amateur hour. He grunted. Pros don't transfer 50 grand from a cruise ship Wi-Fi. It leaves a digital footprint the size of a Yeti. He looked up at me. You want me to dig into her background? I want an autopsy of her life, I said. I want to know where she came from before she met Jason. I want to know about her wellness empire. I want to know if she's done this before. Vance nodded. It'll cost you, and I need access to the house. If she's sloppy digitally, she's sloppy physically. There's going to be a paper trail in her home office. I own the house, Vance, I said, a grim smile touching my lips. I have a key. We can go right now. We drove to 42 Oak Drive in my sedan. The house, my house, looked peaceful in the afternoon light. The lawn was perfectly manicured, a testament to the landscaping service I paid for. I unlocked the front door and disarmed the security system with the code Jason had given me years ago. 1234. He never changed it. Security was an illusion to them. The house smelled of sage and expensive candles. It looked like a magazine spread. White furniture, beige rugs, crystals arranged on the mantelpiece. It was sterile. It didn't look like a home. It looked like a stage set. We went straight to the room Bella called her sanctuary. It was an office off the master bedroom. Vance put on latex gloves. Don't touch anything, he warned. We don't want them to know we were here until the trap snaps shut. He went to the filing cabinet. It was locked. Vance pulled a small tool from his pocket and had it open in 3 seconds. Standard lock, he muttered, useless. He started pulling out files. I stood by the door keeping watch, though I knew they were thousands of miles away. My heart was pounding. This was a violation of privacy, yes, but they had violated my life. They had tried to erase me. Jackpot, Vance said after a few minutes. He pulled out a thick binder hidden at the back of the bottom drawer. It wasn't labeled taxes or bills. It was labeled Project Legacy. My stomach turned. Legacy, that was me. I was the legacy. Vance opened the binder on the desk. It was terrifying. It was a step-by-step plan. Phase 1 isolation. Notes about canceling my book club, intercepting my mail, telling my friends I was too tired for visitors. Phase 2 disorientation. A log of times Bella had moved things in my house when she visited, hidden my glasses or changed the time on my clocks to make me think I was losing track of time. Phase 3 the exit. I leaned in to look at Phase 3. It was a brochure for a facility called Tranquil Meadows. It was a memory care unit, a state-run facility, the kind that smelled of urine and despair. And stapled to it was a budget sheet showing how much money they would save by putting me there instead of a private home. The savings were earmarked for Bella's studio expansion. I felt bile rise in my throat. They weren't just going to steal my money. They were going to lock me away in a warehouse for the forgotten so Bella could build a yoga studio. She's thorough. Vance said, his voice lacking its usual cynicism. Even he was disgusted. Look at this. He held up a sheet of paper. It was a practice sheet. Rows and rows of signatures. Evelyn Patterson. Evelyn Patterson. Evelyn Patterson. Bella had been practicing forging my signature. And at the bottom there was a perfect match on a document I recognized. The affidavit of incapacity I had seen at the doctor's office. She forged the doctor's signature too. I whispered. Dr. Henderson didn't sign that. She did. She probably stole a pad when she was there for the telehealth setup. Vance pulled out his phone and started snapping high-resolution photos of every page. This is fraud, forgery, conspiracy. Evelyn, you have enough here to put her away for 10 years. I don't just want to put her away. I said, my voice trembling with a rage I had never felt before. I want to destroy her. I want Jason to see exactly who he married. I want to strip her of every lie she's ever told. Vance finished photographing the binder and carefully placed it back in the drawer, exactly as he found it. He relocked the cabinet. We have the evidence, Vance said. Now what? I looked around the beige room, the sanctuary built on a foundation of malice. Now, I said, we prepare the welcome home party. They think they're coming back to a funeral for my freedom. Instead, they're coming back to an eviction. I walked out of the room, my head held high. I had the paper trail. I had the proof. And I had 5 days before they returned. It was plenty of time to change the locks. We returned to my house with the digital copies of the binder, safely stored on an encrypted drive. The physical evidence was damning, but in the 21st century the real war is fought in the cloud. Vance set up his laptop on my dining room table, pushing aside the placemats I had laid out for the birthday dinner that never happened. He looked like a bulldog sitting at a tea party. I made a pot of strong coffee while he tapped away at his keyboard. I needed the caffeine. My adrenaline was starting to crash and the heartbreak was trying to creep back in. I pushed it down. I could cry when the war was won. Vance took a sip of the black coffee and grimaced. You brew it strong, Evelyn, he said. I nodded. I like to be awake, Vance. Now tell me what you found. He turned the laptop screen toward me. It was a spiderweb of numbers and dates. I recognized this software. It is what forensic accountants use to trace money laundering. Here is the thing about grifters, Vance said, pointing a thick finger at the screen. They always think the delete button actually deletes things. It does not. It just hides them. I pulled the metadata from the photos Bella posted. You see this timestamp? I leaned in, squinting through my reading glasses. The photo of them on the boat was posted yesterday, but the metadata shows it was taken 3 days ago. And look at the location tag buried in the file. It was not taken on a public cruise ship. It was taken on a private yacht charter. A private yacht. My son was a mid-level manager at a logistics firm. Bella was an influencer with 5,000 followers, most of whom were probably bots. They could not afford a dinghy, let alone a private yacht charter in the Mediterranean. How did they pay for this? I asked the question, but deep down I already knew the answer. Vance typed a few more commands. That is the $1,000,000 question, or in this case, the $40,000 question. He pulled up a credit report. It was mine, but it was not the one I saw every month. This was a deep dive report. It showed a new line of credit opened 6 months ago, a platinum card with a $50,000 limit. I stared at the screen. I did not open this card. I know, Vance said, because the application was submitted from an IP address registered to 42 Oak Drive. Bella applied for it using your social security number. She forged your electronic signature. And here is the kicker. She set the billing address to a P.O. box in the next town over, so you would never see the statements. I felt the blood drain from my face. Identity theft. My own daughter-in-law had stolen my identity. She was wearing my credit rating like a skin suit while she drank champagne in Greece. I looked at the transaction history on the card. It was a catalog of greed. First-class tickets to Athens, the yacht charter, designer luggage, dinners that cost more than my monthly grocery bill. And right there at the bottom was a charge from 5 months ago. A deposit for the Tranquil Meadows Memory Care Facility. She used my own money to pay for my prison, I whispered. The cruelty was breathtaking. She was not just stealing from me. She was making me pay for my own erasure. Vance scrolled down further. It gets worse, Evelyn. Look at the authorized users on the card. There were 2 names, Bella Patterson and Jason Patterson. My heart stopped. Jason, my son, my sweet boy who used to bring me dandelions from the yard. He was on the account. He was spending the money. He knew. Are you sure? I asked, my voice barely audible. Maybe she added him without his knowledge. Maybe he thinks it is her money. Vance looked at me with pity in his eyes. He clicked on a transaction receipt. It was signed digitally, Jason Patterson, and next to it was a note in the merchant field for the yacht charter. Birthday surprise trip. He knew, Evelyn, Vance said gently. He might be manipulated. He might be weak, but he is spending the money. He signed the receipt. I stood up and walked to the window. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the lawn. The garden I had planted when Jason was a boy was dying, because I had been too busy planning a party for people who hated me to water it. I felt a cold, hard stone form in my chest where my heart used to be. Jason had made his choice. He chose the wife who lied to him over the mother who loved him. He chose the easy money over the hard truth. I turned back to Vance. Print it, I said. Print it all, the credit card statements, the IP address logs, the metadata. Vance hit the print button. The sound of the printer was rhythmic and steady, like a drumbeat, like a march to war. Is that everything? I asked. Not quite, Vance said. I found one more thing. It is not financial, it is reputational. He opened a new tab. It was Bella's blog, the one she used to sell her wellness lifestyle. I had never read it because frankly I found it insufferable. Vance scrolled to a post dated 2 weeks ago. The title made my stomach turn. Dealing with dementia, how I care for my toxic mother-in-law. I walked over and read the screen. It was a long rambling post about the burden of caring for an aging relative who was losing her grip on reality. She described incidents that never happened. She claimed I had become violent. She claimed I had forgotten who Jason was. And in the comments hundreds of strangers were pouring out their sympathy. You are a saint, Bella. So brave of you to handle this. Put her in a home for your own sanity. She was destroying my reputation to strangers to justify locking me up. She was crowdsourcing approval for her crime. I am going to sue her for libel, I said. After I have her arrested for fraud. Vance closed the laptop. You have enough here to bury them, Evelyn. We have the financial fraud, the identity theft, the elder abuse, the conspiracy. You hold all the cards. I picked up the stack of warm paper from the printer. It felt heavy in my hands. It was the weight of betrayal. I have the cards, I said. Now I just need to wait for them to come to the table. When do they land? Vance checked his phone. Their flight lands on Saturday at 4 p.m. They will be at the house by 5:30 Saturday, the day they claimed was my real birthday, the day they were planning to walk in here and present me with a cake and a mental competency hearing. I looked at the calendar. It was Wednesday. I had 3 days. 3 days is a long time in the legal world, I said. It is enough time to file an emergency eviction order. It is enough time to meet with the district attorney. And it is enough time to change the locks. Vance grinned. I know a locksmith who works late. Call him, I said. And Vance, I want you to be here on Saturday. I want you to record everything. Because when they realize the locks don't work, I want to capture the look on Bella's face in high definition. The locksmith arrived at 10 that night. His name was Benny and he had tattoos up to his neck, but he handled the deadbolt with the precision of a surgeon. I stood on the porch wrapped in my cardigan watching him work. Every turn of his screwdriver felt like a stitch closing a wound. For 10 years I had kept that door open. I had let them walk in and out of my life, treating my home like a hotel and my heart like an ATM. No more. When Benny handed me the new set of keys, they felt heavy in my palm, cold and final. I paid him in cash and tipped him $50. He nodded, tipped his cap, and drove away, leaving me alone in a fortress that was finally secure. I locked the door. The click was the most satisfying sound I had heard in years. Thursday morning I put on my court shoes. They were Italian leather, sensible but intimidating. I drove to the county courthouse with the binder Vance had compiled sitting on the passenger seat. I did not go to the public filing window. I went to the judge's chambers. I knew Judge Walters from my days practicing real estate law. We had argued cases against each other in the 80s. He was a stern man who had no patience for fools and even less for fraudsters. When his clerk announced me, he looked up from his paperwork with a smile that vanished the moment he saw the look on my face. Evelyn, he said, taking off his glasses, you look like you are about to declare war. I sat down and placed the binder on his desk. I am not declaring war, Henry. I am ending one. I walked him through the evidence. I showed him the forged medical affidavit. I showed him the credit card application with the stolen Social Security number. I showed him the blog post where my daughter-in-law solicited sympathy for a dementia diagnosis that did not exist. Judge Walters went through the pages in silence. His face grew harder with every turn. When he got to the brochure for the state-run memory care facility, he closed the binder and looked at me. This is monstrous, Evelyn. He said, his voice low and dangerous. They are trying to conserve you. To take your rights away. I nodded. They are landing on Saturday, Henry. They think they are coming home to a confused old woman. I want them to come home to a restraining order and an order to vacate. He signed the papers right there. He granted an emergency temporary restraining order based on elder abuse and financial fraud. He signed the eviction notice for the property at 42 Oak Drive, granting me immediate possession, because I had never transferred the deed, and because I could prove they were using the property to commit a crime against me. The law was on my side. It was a nuclear option. It meant that the moment they stepped foot on the property, they would be trespassing. It meant the police could remove them. It meant they were homeless. I took the signed orders and walked out of the courthouse. The sun was shining, but all I could feel was the cold steel of justice. Friday was a blur of logistics. I hired a private security detail to sit outside my house. I did not trust Bella not to try and break in when she realized her key didn't work. I went to 42 Oak Drive with the sheriff's deputy to post the notice. I taped the neon orange paper to the front door right over the welcome wreath Bella had made out of dried twigs. Notice to vacate. Writ of possession. The legal language was dry, but the message was screaming. Get out. The deputy looked at me with sympathy. It's a hard thing to do to family, ma'am, he said. I looked at the house that I had bought with my own money, the house where I had hoped my grandchildren would grow up safe. It is hard, deputy, I agreed, but it is harder to let them bury you while you are still alive. Saturday arrived with a gray, heavy sky. It matched my mood. I sat in my living room in the wingback chair facing the window. Vance was parked down the street in his unmarked sedan, camera ready. The security guard was posted at the gate. My phone was on the table recording. I checked the flight tracker app. Their plane had landed 20 minutes early. They were on the ground. They were collecting the luggage bought with my stolen credit card. They were getting into a cab. At 5:15 I saw the headlights. It was a yellow taxi. It slowed down and pulled into the driveway. I watched through the sheer curtains. The door opened and Jason stepped out. He looked tan. He looked happy. He was wearing a linen shirt I had paid for. Bella climbed out after him looking radiant in a white sundress holding a straw hat. They looked like a couple in a magazine. They looked like they didn't have a care in the world. They had no idea that their entire life had been dismantled while they were sipping ouzo. Jason walked up the path dragging 2 large suitcases. Bella followed, scrolling on her phone, probably checking the likes on her latest post about her healing journey. Jason reached the front door. He put down the bags. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his key. He slid it into the lock. I saw him frown. He jiggled it. He pulled it out and tried again. He leaned his shoulder against the door. It didn't budge. Mom. I heard him call out muffled through the glass. Mom, are you in there? The key isn't working. I stood up. I smoothed down my skirt. I walked to the door. I did not open it. I flipped the deadbolt so they could hear the heavy clunk of the lock engaging further. Then I pulled back the curtain on the side window just enough so they could see my face. I wasn't smiling. I wasn't crying. I looked at them with the cold, dead stare of a stranger. Bella saw me. She waved frantically, mouthing Evelyn open the door. She pointed to her watch. She was probably ready to launch into her speech about how confused I must be. I picked up the piece of paper I had taped to the inside of the glass. It wasn't a legal document. It was a printout of their credit card statement highlighted in neon yellow where it said Tranquil Meadows Memory Care. I held it up to the window. I saw Bella freeze. Her tan face went pale. Her mouth opened but no sound came out. She grabbed Jason's arm. Jason looked at the paper. He squinted. Then he looked at me. His eyes went wide. The confusion on his face was replaced by a dawn of terrifying realization. I pointed to the driveway. I pointed to the street. And then for the first time in a week I spoke. My voice was muffled by the glass, but they heard me. Get off my lawn. Get off my lawn, I said. The words were muffled by the glass, but the sentiment was clear enough. Jason stared at me, his face a mask of confusion. He looked from the paper in my hand, the damning credit card statement, to my face. He looked like a child who had just been told Santa Claus was actually a burglar. But Bella didn't look confused, she looked feral. The mask of the wellness influencer slipped, revealing the desperate grifter underneath. She started pounding on the door with her fist. Evelyn, open this door right now, she screamed. Her voice cracked, shrill and ugly in the quiet neighborhood evening. You are having an episode. Jason, call 911, she's dangerous. She's having a psychotic break. I didn't flinch, I just watched. I watched my son hesitate. He pulled his phone out, his thumb hovering over the screen. Mom, he called out, his voice trembling, just let us in, we can talk about this. You're not making sense. Call them, Jason. Bella shrieked, grabbing his arm. She stole my credit card. She's delusional. Show them the affidavit Dr. Henderson signed. We need to have her committed right now before she hurts herself. She was doubling down. Even with the evidence staring her in the face, she was sticking to the script. Evelyn is crazy. Evelyn is dangerous. It was almost impressive in a sociopathic sort of way. I stepped back from the window and picked up my own phone. I dialed the number for the private security detail I had hired, who were parked just around the corner. Now, I said. Then I walked to the hallway table where I had laid out my documents, the restraining order, the evidence binder, the copy of the forged checks. I picked them up. I heard sirens in the distance. Bella must have called the police from the car before they even walked up the path. Good. Let them come. I waited until the flashing blue lights washed over my living room walls. I saw 2 patrol cars pull up. Officers stepped out, hands on their belts. Bella ran toward them, playing the victim perfectly. She was crying now, crocodile tears streaming down her face. She pointed at my house, making wild gestures. She's in there. I heard her yell. She's locked us out. She has dementia. She thinks we're robbing her. The officers approached the door. One of them, a young man named Officer Miller, knocked firmly. Mrs. Patterson, this is the police. Can you open the door? I unlocked the deadbolt and opened the door. I did not look frail. I did not look confused. I stood tall in my charcoal suit, my hair perfectly coiffed, holding a stack of legal documents with the confidence of a woman who had spent 40 years in a courtroom. Good evening, officer, I said calmly. I believe these people are trespassing. Bella gasped. Trespassing? We live here. Well, we take care of her. She's confused. I am not confused, officer, I said, handing him the blue-backed folder. I am the sole owner of this property, and this is a temporary restraining order granted by Judge Walters this morning against Bella Patterson and Jason Patterson for elder abuse and financial fraud. Officer Miller took the papers. He shone his flashlight on the judge's signature. He looked at the seal. He looked at Bella, who was now turning a distinct shade of gray. This looks in order, ma'am, Miller said. He turned to Jason. Sir, this is a court order. You need to vacate the premises immediately. You are not to come within 500 feet of Mrs. Patterson. But that's impossible, Jason stammered. Mom, what are you doing? We're family. No, Jason, I said, my voice cutting through the night air like a knife. Family doesn't steal my identity to pay for a yacht. Family doesn't try to lock me in a memory care unit so they can turn my house into a yoga studio. I threw the photos Vance had taken onto the porch steps, the photos of the project legacy binder, the photos of the forged signatures. I know everything, I said. I know about the forgery. I know about the credit cards. I know about Dr. Henderson. It's all over, Jason. Jason looked down at the photos scattered on the concrete. He saw his wife's handwriting practicing my signature. He looked at Bella. Bella, he whispered, what is this? Bella didn't answer him. She glared at me with pure hatred. You old witch, she hissed. You think you can win? You're alone. You have no one. I have the deed, I said coldly, and I have the law. Now get off my property before I have you arrested for violating a court order. Officer Miller stepped forward. Ma'am, sir, you need to leave now. Jason looked broken. He grabbed his suitcase, his shoulders slumping. Come on, Bella, he mumbled. Let's go home. We'll sort this out tomorrow. Home, I repeated. A small dry smile touched my lips. Oh, Jason, you might want to check your messages. He looked at me confused. What? Go on, I said, closing the door. Go home. I watched through the peephole as they dragged their luggage back to the taxi, which had miraculously waited. They argued all the way to the car. Jason was waving his hands. Bella was screaming into her phone. The police stayed until the taxi drove away. I knew exactly where they were going. They were going to 42 Oak Drive, the house they thought was theirs, the house they had renovated with my money, the house where they felt safe. It took them 20 minutes to get there. I poured myself a glass of iced tea and sat by the phone. I knew it would ring. At 6:45 p.m. my phone buzzed. It was Jason. I let it go to voicemail, it buzzed again and again. Finally I picked up. I didn't say hello, I just listened. The locks, Jason shouted. He sounded hysterical. Mom, the key doesn't work and there's an orange sticker on the door. It says eviction. What did you do? I evicted you, I said calmly. It turns out, Jason, that when you use a property to commit a felony against the landlord, the lease, even an implied one, is null and void, Judge Walters agreed. But where are we supposed to sleep? He cried. All our stuff is in there, Bella's studio, my computer. Your stuff will be packed by professional movers on Monday and placed in a storage unit, I said. I have paid for the first month. After that it is up to you. Mom, please, he sobbed. We have nowhere to go. We have no money. The bank cards aren't working. I know, I said. I froze the accounts. Identity theft protocol. You can't do this. Bella's voice screamed from the background. I have rights. I'm a tenant. You are a squatter, I corrected, and now you are homeless. I took a sip of my tea, Jason. I said, my voice softening just a fraction. You have a choice. You can stay on the sidewalk with that woman who stole my life and lied to your face, or you can walk away. But if you stay with her, you go down with her. Because on Monday morning I am handing the full evidence file to the district attorney. She is going to prison. There was silence on the other end. Just the heavy breathing of a man whose world had collapsed. Choose wisely, I said, and I hung up. I did not go to sleep after I hung up the phone. Sleep felt like a luxury I couldn't afford. Not while the enemy was still scratching at the gates. Instead, I poured myself a second glass of iced tea and sat in the dark living room, illuminated only by the streetlights filtering through the blinds. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. It was Vance. You might want to grab some popcorn, Evelyn. His gravelly voice came through the speaker. The show is just getting started over here. Vance had followed them, of course he had. He was parked across the street from 42 Oak Drive, watching the fallout from the front row. Tell me, I said, leaning back in my chair. Well, Vance said, narrating with the dry detachment of a sportscaster. The princess is currently screaming at a bush. I think she's on the phone with her lawyer, but considering it's Saturday night and she's broke, I'm guessing she's yelling at voicemail. She's kicking her Louis Vuitton suitcase. It's quite a look. And Jason, I asked. My voice was quieter. He's sitting on the curb, Vance said, head in his hands. He looks like he went 12 rounds with Tyson. Wait, he's moving. I held my breath. What is he doing? He's picking up the papers, Vance said, the ones you threw at him. He's reading them under the streetlight. I closed my eyes. I could picture it perfectly. The harsh yellow glow of the street lamp, illuminating the evidence of his wife's betrayal. The practice sheet where she perfected my signature. The credit card application. The brochure for the memory care unit. He's standing up. Vance continued. He's walking over to her. She's waving her arms. She's trying to grab the papers. He pulled away. Oh, Evelyn. The body language has shifted. He's not the puppy anymore. I could almost hear the conversation. Bella would be screaming that I forged the papers, that I was crazy, that it was all a setup. But Jason worked in logistics. He understood paper trails. He knew that you couldn't fake a bank IP log or a notarized affidavit timestamp without a level of sophistication I simply didn't possess. Or rather, a level of malice I had never shown. The neighbors are coming out, Vance reported. Mr. Henderson from across the street is on his porch. He's on the phone, probably calling the cops. Bella is screeching something about my rights in my studio. She never cared about the house, I whispered. She only cared about the studio, the status. Police are rolling up, Vance said. Same patrol car as before. Officer Miller looks tired. He's talking to Jason. Bella is trying to interject. Miller just held up a hand. He's asking for ID. There was a long pause. All I could hear was the static of the line and the beating of my own heart. They're leaving, Vance said finally. Jason is getting in the back of the patrol car. Looks like a courtesy ride. He's leaving the suitcases on the lawn, and Bella. Vance let out a short, sharp laugh. She's standing there alone. Officer Miller just handed her a card, probably for a shelter. She's trying to call an Uber, but let me guess you blocked the card. Everything is frozen, I said, even the joint account. Then she's walking, Vance said. She's grabbing her purse and she's starting to walk. She's leaving the luggage behind. She knows it's over, Evelyn. Rats always know when the ship is truly sunk. Thank you, Vance, I said. Go home, send me the bill. Already sent, he said. Pleasure doing business with you, counselor. The line went dead. I sat there in the silence of my home, my safe, quiet home. I had won, I had protected my assets, I had exposed the fraud. But as I looked at the empty chair where Jason used to sit for Sunday dinners, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt a deep aching hollow in my chest. I had saved my house, but I had broken my son's heart. It was necessary surgery, cutting out the cancer to save the patient. But the recovery was going to be long and painful. I walked to the kitchen and rinsed my glass. I put it in the dishwasher. I wiped the counter. Routine, structure. These were the things that kept you sane when your world turned upside down. I went upstairs to my bedroom. I took off the charcoal suit and hung it up. I put on my flannel nightgown. I looked at the navy blue dress with the pearl buttons hanging in the back of the closet. The dress I wore to the party no one came to. I took it off the hanger. I walked to the trash can in the corner of the room, and I dropped it in. That Evelyn. The one who waited, the one who begged for scraps of time. The one who let herself be erased. She was gone. She wasn't coming back. I climbed into bed. I needed to sleep. Tomorrow was Sunday. And on Monday, the district attorney's office opened at 8 a.m. I had a meeting, and Jason had a choice to make. Monday morning arrived with the kind of crisp, clear sky that makes you feel like anything is possible. I was up at 5. I drank my coffee black. I put on a cream-colored suit. Silk tailored, expensive. I wasn't mourning the loss of my family anymore. I was dressing for a business transaction. I drove to the district attorney's office at 8 sharp. I didn't need an appointment. I knew Marcus Thorne from the country club. He was surprised to see me, but when I placed the 3-inch binder on his desk, his surprise turned to professional interest. This isn't a complaint, Evelyn, he said, flipping through Vance's meticulous documentation of the credit card fraud, the identity theft, and the forged medical affidavits. This is an indictment wrapped in a bow. I did the work for you, Marcus, I said, clasping my hands on the table. I want her charged. Fraud, forgery, elder abuse, grand larceny, and I want the assets seized before she can pawn the jewelry she bought with my retirement fund. Marcus nodded, reaching for his phone. We'll issue the warrant within the hour. But Evelyn, what about your son? His name is on some of these credit card receipts. I paused. This was the moment I had dreaded. The moment where the mother in me wanted to protect the child, but the woman in me knew he had to face the consequences. Jason was an accessory, I said, my voice steady, but he was also a victim of coercive control. I am willing to advocate for a plea deal, probation, restitution, but only if he testifies against her. As if on cue, the heavy oak door creaked open. Jason stood there. He looked terrible. He was wearing the same clothes from Saturday night, wrinkled and stained. His eyes were red-rimmed. He hadn't shaved. He looked like a man who had lost everything, which of course he had. Mom, he croaked. He didn't step into the room. He stood in the doorway like he was waiting for permission to exist. I didn't smile. I didn't rush to hug him. I gestured to the empty chair next to me. Sit down, Jason. He sat. He couldn't look at me. He looked at the binder on the desk. I didn't know about the memory care facility. He whispered, "I swear to God, Mom. She told me the money was for an investment property. She told me you agreed to it but forgot." "And you believed her?" I asked. "You believed I would give you $50,000 and then forget about it?" I wanted to believe her. He admitted, a tear sliding down his nose. "Because it was easier than admitting I married a liar. I was weak. I'm so sorry." "Sorry doesn't pay the American Express bill, Jason," I said sharply, "but testimony does." I pushed a glass of water toward him. "The day is going to ask you questions. If you lie to protect her, you go to prison with her. If you tell the truth, you get a chance to start over. It is your choice." Jason took a breath. He picked up the glass. His hand shook, but he drank. Then he looked at Marcus. "She kept a second set of books," Jason said. "In the cloud, I know the password." The arrest happened 3 hours later. Bella, or rather Monica Slater's, as her fingerprints revealed, was caught trying to board a Greyhound bus to Santa Fe. She had dyed her hair brown in a motel sink, but she was still wearing the Cartier watch she bought with my identity. The body cam footage of her screaming, "Do you know who I am?" as they handcuffed her was the most satisfying reality TV show I had ever watched. She was denied bail. It turns out Monica had outstanding warrants in 3 other states for similar confidence schemes. She wasn't a wellness guru. She was a career predator who targeted elderly women through their sons. The months that followed were quiet. The silence in my house didn't feel hollow anymore. It felt peaceful. I hired a gardener to bring my flower beds back to life. I joined a new book club. I started consulting for a legal aid clinic that helped seniors protect their assets from family fraud. Jason moved into a small studio apartment across town. He got a job at a warehouse. Entry-level hard labor, it was good for him. He needed to sweat out the toxicity. He came over on Sundays to mow my lawn and fix the gutters. We didn't talk much at first, we just worked side by side. He was earning his way back, not into my bank account. That was locked up tighter than Fort Knox. But into my life. One afternoon in late spring, I was sitting on the porch reading a novel. Jason finished edging the sidewalk and walked up the steps, wiping his forehead. "Mom," he said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope. It was thin. "What is this?" I asked. "It's a check," he said. $500. It's not much, but it's the first installment. I'm going to pay back every cent of the debt that was in my name, even if it takes me 10 years. I took the envelope. I didn't tear it up. I didn't say, "Oh, honey, don't worry about it." I opened it, checked the amount, and nodded. "Thank you, Jason," I said. "I will apply this to the principal." He smiled then, a real smile. Not the anxious people-pleasing grin he used to wear around Bella, but the tired, honest smile of a man who was finally standing on his own 2 feet. "Happy birthday, Mom," he said softly. I looked at him confused. "My birthday isn't for 6 months." "I know," he said, "but I missed the last one. I figure I owe you about 6 months of makeup days." I watched him walk to his beat-up car. He waved as he drove away. I sat back in my chair and looked out at my neighborhood. The sun was shining on the green grass. The flowers were blooming. The for sale sign on 42 Oak Drive had a sold sticker across it. I had sold the investment property and put the money into a trust for my future grandchildren. A trust that Jason couldn't touch but his children would enjoy. I wasn't the invisible grandmother anymore. I wasn't the burden. I was Evelyn Patterson. I was the landlord of my own life. And let me tell you, the view from the head of the table is pretty good when you aren't waiting for anyone else to validate your existence. So that is my story. It wasn't the 65th birthday party I planned, but it was the birthday where I gave myself the greatest gift of all. My dignity. I know it sounds harsh. I know some people will say, "But he's your son, you should have just forgiven him." To those people I say this. Forgiveness without change is just permission. I love my son enough to let him hit rock bottom so he could learn how to climb. What about you? If your family tried to gaslight you, to make you think you were losing your mind just so they could take your money, would you have the courage to change the locks? Or would you open the door just to keep the peace? Let me know in the comments. I read them all usually with a nice cup of tea in my very quiet, very secure home. And if you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe. It helps the channel, and honestly, it lets me know that there are other people out there who believe that getting older doesn't mean giving up. Until next time, trust your gut, check your bank statements, and never ever let them tell you that you're confused when you're just inconvenient.